Good afternoon to you. I'm Danilo Evangelista, and welcome to today's tropical weather outlook for June 16th, 2026. Today, we are going to talk about the chances of a tropical storm hitting the northwestern Gulf being now very, very likely, as the National Hurricane Center this afternoon has officially designated Potential Tropical Cyclone One in the Atlantic, not off the coast, literally on the coast here in southern Texas, and this is very likely going to move offshore into the Gulf waters here of the northwestern Gulf, and very likely become our first named storm of the hurricane season in the Atlantic. And this is going to bring many impacts, even though it'll more than likely be a weak storm. I'll go over everything that you're going to have to watch out for in this discussion, but what's been shaping up for the last several days now, regardless of whether or not we were going to see development, was the fact that there was potentially, and it is becoming increasingly so likely now, that we're going to see a huge rain event across the south and across the Gulf Coast, and the chances and the rain totals keep on going up with every single hour. But now we have an extra bit of formality added to it, since this is very likely to actually become a named tropical system. The latest on Potential Tropical Cyclone 1E right now, maximum sustained winds are at 30 miles per hour with a minimum pressure of 1,006 millibars, located at 27.1 north, 97.8 west. So this is literally on land right now in southern Texas, and this came from the remnants of the tropical wave and the CAG. If you remember, a few days ago over the weekend, or actually, last week, we had a disturbance in the Bay of Campeche. It went inland over Mexico, and now it looks like it's going to reemerge over the northwestern Gulf here, and it's not going to have a lot of time, but with the time that it has, and given how well structured the system already is, as I'll show you in a little bit here, this is very likely to quickly develop, probably as soon as it moves offshore here, and become a named storm. And we have the latest advisory here from the National Hurricane Center. Dangerous flash flooding occurring over portions of Texas and Louisiana from Potential Tropical Cyclone One. Probably the biggest impact from this system. And of course, we'll talk about just how big and just how expansive in just a little bit. Here's a satellite look at Potential Tropical Cyclone One right now. And you can see, for a typical early season system, this is about what you would expect. Not a very organized system at all. Definitely somewhat sheared here, coming from the east, or coming from the west, shear moving to the east. And that's causing most of our showers and thunderstorms associated with this system to be on the eastern flank. And that's going to pump lots of rainfall across Texas and Louisiana over the next few days. In fact, it is already happening right now, but we're just awaiting on the low-level center here, which is over Texas, to more than likely move offshore in a short bit here. And because of that, this will more than likely almost immediately become a identifiable tropical system. And taking a look at the radar shot here out of southern Texas right now, first of all, you could see lots of the heavy rainfall that is streaming its way southward from the Gulf, and especially prominent here on the eastern flank. Corpus Christi, Texas right now, dealing with quite a bit of showers and thunderstorms, and it's pretty much stretching up along the coast right now, stretching into Galveston, and probably seeing a lot of heavy rainfall into Houston as well, although the radar probably does not show it, but as this gets further along, we probably will see it better. But rainfall going to be streaming in from the Gulf, up and down the coast, and of course, as well, you can see by the radar here, definitely a very cyclonic pattern associated with our low-level center, which seems to be just south of Corpus Christi, and it continues, at least by the radar shot here, it looks like it is very close to moving offshore, and it's going to continue to do so in the next few hours. And once again, once it does so, more than likely we are going to have our first named storm of the season here, and that's what the National Hurricane Center is forecasting. By tomorrow morning, they are expecting a tropical storm out of this, and it is most likely going to ride the Gulf Coast here from Texas, more than likely making its way into far eastern Texas and maybe southwestern Louisiana as a weak tropical storm. And once again, it is going to be Arthur. The first name of the list of hurricane names this year is Arthur, and that's what this storm is going to be as it makes landfall more than likely Wednesday evening here. And because of that, we already have tropical storm watches in effect from Texas all the way into the Louisiana coastline. And let's actually see what those watches and warnings are right now. According to the 2 p.m. advisory from the National Hurricane Center, tropical storm watch is in effect from Sargent to Morgan City. And so basically anybody in the tropical storm watch area here is more than likely going to experience tropical storm gusts. I don't think the National Hurricane Center is expecting this to become a very strong storm. And again, judging by the satellite here, I think it's very obvious that whatever does happen will more than likely not be a system that is very strong. In fact, let me actually see. Let me go to the discussion here. They, at least as of the 11 a.m. discussion, they only forecast a 40 miles per hour system here. But it is actually going to somewhat depend on how much this is able to make its way offshore here. All of the track guidance, though, at least as of the 18Z model run, definitely hinting at this moving offshore. And that was kind of one of the biggest uncertainties of this system in terms of whether or not we would see development, is whether or not this would actually be able to move offshore and make a splashdown onto the water. But it seems like it is moving on an east enough trajectory that it is going to remain off the coast here even for a little bit. In fact, actually, to be honest with you, this might even have a full day over water here. And sea surface temperatures in the northwestern Gulf are definitely very, very warm. We have sea surface temperatures here as much as 28, 29, even 30 degrees Celsius. So we're definitely going to have some decent convective activity. Probably going to try to see this consolidate a little bit. Maybe we might see a storm that's a little bit stronger than 40 miles per hour. But it's one thing that'll especially be amplified by these very warm sea surface temperatures is the amount of moisture being produced and the amount of rainfall that'll fall all up along the Texas and Louisiana coastline here and stretching inland as well. And I'll talk about that in a little bit here. But let's take a look at the GFS and see what it shows right now. And you can see definitely a very borderline situation. It shows, this system trying to move offshore, and the GFS kind of scrapes the coastline here. And that's what it's probably going to do. But more than likely, again, it'll definitely move off the shore enough that it'll more than likely develop, and its center, most of its center will probably be offshore. And I'd imagine as well, given that how close this will be to the coastline, and also given the direction that this is moving, that some sort of the frictional situation here along the Gulf Coast, the friction of the coastline, I should say, is probably going to help tighten up the circulation here just a little bit. So once this does move offshore and move on to the water here, I think it is almost guaranteed that this system is probably going to become our first named storm here in the Atlantic, and more than likely going to become Arthur. But I don't want you to pay attention to the naming situation, the name factor of this storm, as much as the fact that this is going to be a huge rainmaker, especially for, once again, Texas and Louisiana, and pretty much most of the Gulf Coast here, stretching all the way east into Florida and potentially Alabama. And the rainfall totals here from the Weather Prediction Center over the next 7 days indicate that very, very well. We're potentially going to see amounts in many areas as much as half a foot, if not more. Maybe some areas seeing as much as a foot of rain from this. And a lot of that is especially going to be felt here along the Texas and Louisiana coastline. Now, who exactly gets the highest rain totals will depend on the track, obviously, especially if we see this track, or try to track a little bit more to the east. If this rises the coastline a little bit more, we might see some of these heavy rain totals shift a little bit to the eastward. And that's what's happened here over the past day or so. Houston, I mean, they're still expected to get a lot of rainfall out of this storm, more than likely, but it looks like less likely now that Houston is probably not going to get as much rainfall. We're probably not going to see the peak rainfall totals over them, which is obviously a good thing given that Houston is a very large metro area. But even then, they're still expected to see a few inches of rain here. And adding to that as well, the rainfall totals too, or the storm surge totals as well, which is especially going to be an issue for eastern Louisiana or eastern Texas and western Louisiana. Most areas here, stretching all the way from Matagorda, Texas, all the way to the mouth of the Mississippi, we could see at least 1 to 3 feet of storm surge, but especially from Galveston Bay to Morgan City, storm surge could peak as much as 2 to maybe even up to 4 feet. And as I always say, the water is really the number one killer when it comes to tropical systems, and especially in this case here, the biggest impact will come from the water. The storm surge will mainly be something that is felt right along the coastline here, but if you are right along the coast, this will more than likely amplify any flooding concerns on top of the heavy rainfall of a few inches, probably up to a foot in some areas. So it's just adding misery on top of misery here with this storm, and that's probably going to be the most highlighting issue when it comes to this with Arthur here, or it's Tropical Cyclone One now, but very likely it's going to be Arthur in just a little bit. This is mainly going to be a rain event, not a wind event. But the rain that we are going to see is pretty likely going to be quite impactful. And the Weather Prediction Center is highlighting that. And I think the best, case to make to everyone as to why I think the rain will be very impactful here is, again, the amount that we're going to see, but the fact that because of how much we're going to get is more than likely going to lead to lots of flooding. And you can see the Weather Prediction Center forecast here. For the next few days, I'll show you. But starting off here with day 1, which is today, once again, already we are seeing a lot of these rain bands, making their way and training over portions of the Texas and Louisiana coast. Houston is in a moderate risk for flash flooding today, and that extends eastward all the way up into New Orleans here, pretty much, or right near New Orleans. But all the way from southern Texas up into Florida and Georgia, we have at least a slight risk for flash flooding. And this is just today. And then tomorrow, the flash flooding threat persists, especially for eastern Texas and Louisiana. And then eventually that shifts into Louisiana, Mississippi, and Alabama, but the elevated risk for flash flooding in general extends all the way northward, potentially into the Mid-South, and even into into Appalachia here, and getting into Pennsylvania. So widespread flooding. Many people are going to be impacted, and especially here for Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, and across the South, the threat even extends into day 4, where we still have a slight risk for flooding, and even into day 5, the threat remains, although it slowly dies down as the week progresses. So multiple days of heavy rainfall here, and we know exactly what that's going to result in. That's more than likely going to result in flash flooding. It's going to oversoak the ground. We're probably going to see river flooding as well. This is not something to take lightly, and I say that especially because I've said this before, but oftentimes a lot of these flood events can catch people off guard, especially when they are not with or they're not being associated with actual named storms, named tropical entities. Now, maybe since this will more than likely be a named tropical entity, I mean, it's already been given a formal designation right now, but because maybe this will more than likely be a actual named entity, maybe people will take it more seriously, but maybe not, because they will see that this is only going to be a weak tropical storm. I don't know. But either way, the flood threat is significant, and it is not something to mess around with. I don't believe so at all. And the National Hurricane Center highlighting here once again in their key messages, pretty much summing up everything I went over. Potentially life-threatening flash flooding and urban flooding is possible across the Texas coast eastward into central Mississippi through Thursday. Prolonged rainfall may extend the flood threat into the weekend. Widespread small stream and minor river flooding is expected along the Texas coast into southwest Louisiana, and with isolated significant river flooding possible. And of course, tropical storm conditions are also more than likely going to happen as well, especially if you are along the coastline. But the biggest threat is going to be the rainfall out of this. But all of this, no matter what, will be significant, and it is going to impact many people. It's going to cause a disturbance to lives, whether it is a minor disturbance, as in you kind of just have to deal with flooding, and that might impact your driving, especially if you need to drive to, do things throughout life. Or maybe this will cause major impacts to people, as in property to damage, and maybe even some loss of life. All things you cannot take out of the or take off the table here, and certainly things we will be watching very closely here with potential Tropical Cyclone One, very likely to become Tropical Storm Arthur, probably by tonight, and more than likely by tomorrow at this point. So we will continue to do these updates throughout the evening and definitely throughout tomorrow here. I did want to get an update earlier today when the National Hurricane Center designated this at 11 o'clock, but I was busy. So I'm sorry I got this update out a little bit late, but I guess it's not too late. It's, still almost only 4 o'clock here Eastern time. So I guess, a good number of you will see it, hopefully. But recon is going to go into the system. We are more than likely going to get recon data from this storm or system or whatever it is, and more than by tonight, I think around late tonight, recon is going to go in. More than likely, it'll probably already be over the open Gulf waters, so that'll be very interesting to see what they find. Maybe it'll already be a tropical storm by then. We'll see, but I'm pretty sure we will have Tropical Storm Arthur by tonight. But what I'm trying to tell you is updates are coming. We're going to be doing multiple updates throughout the day here. So we're done with this one. Probably going to do another one later tonight, although it's probably going to be a very late night update. And I'll definitely have multiple updates for you throughout the day tomorrow here on YouTube, but especially on Twitter or X or whatever you want to call it as well. So make sure to follow me on Twitter too, at Danilo Evangelista, so you can get updates consistently throughout the day. But that's going to wrap it up for our discussion for now. Obviously, a lot to watch here in the tropics, and of course, we will be continuing to do so. Stay safe, enjoy the rest of your day, and I will definitely talk to you all again very soon.